Alrighty, today I would like to share with you how I've been working on my latest crochet obsession, which has been these crochet pumpkins. They're actually really simple. I think they make a really good beginner project, and here are three examples in various sizes. The sizes of these vary so much because I switched out different yarns. For the purpose of this tutorial, I will be showing you how to use worsted weight number 4 yarn, and then I have two different greens because you'll see later that I do stems in different yarns and it kind of changes up how it looks just by switching around the yarn. So I'm going to go ahead and get started and chain the height that I would like my pumpkin to be. It's going to be a little bit shorter than however long your chain is because when you stuff it, it will make it just a little bit shorter, but it'll be about whatever height you chain. So I go ahead and stitch that. And then I am going to go ahead and go back and stitch into the chain, but I am doing back loop only. Now if you can see here, a chain, normally when you go into it, you'll have two loops on the hook when you go through the chain, but in this case, I'm only going through that first loop of the chain stitch, so there'll only be one loop on my hook when I am stitching into it. So you go across and you're just doing back loop only, and that's honestly pretty much how we're going to do the rest of the pumpkin, at least the orange base for it. If you do back loop only back and forth across your pumpkin for each row, that's how we get our ribbed stitch. So in the next row it's a little bit easier to see. You have the two loops that you normally stitch into, but for back loop only crochet, and we're single crocheting. You could do this with half double crochet, but for the purpose of amigurumi or plushies, I like to do single crochet because it's a little bit harder to see the stuffing on the inside, so it gives it more of a finished look. So we're doing back loop only, just back and forth until you get a width that you like when you fold it in half. And yeah, that's all you have to do to get that nice pumpkin texture. And what we're going to do next, once we get to that desired width of a pumpkin when it is folded in half, we're just going to single crochet those sides together. And you don't have to worry about the back loop only for this. I stitched just through each of the rows, each stitch together. And something I like to do is leave that end instead of stitching around it like I normally would when I'm working on projects. I'll just stitch around the ends so I'm sort of weaving them in as I go. But you'll see in a second here that once I've stitched across to create this tube of the pumpkin, I'm going to be using that end, so it doesn't really serve me to stitch around it and hide it in this case. So I'm getting to the end here, and then I'm going to trim a length of tail that I'll be able to use to go ahead and stitch around the pumpkin. I'm going to take a darning or tapestry needle, which are needles that are really good to have if you're going to be doing a lot of work with yarn. And I'm just going around the top of this little cylinder that we've created, this tube, and I'm pulling it nice and tight so that it cinches in all together and you have a base for your pumpkin. It should look something like this when you pull it tight, and then you just want to secure it, and then I just put the end on the inside of the pumpkin because I'm about to stuff it in a second, so it will be nice and hidden inside. So yeah, I'm gonna grab my stuffing, gonna go ahead and add quite a bit of stuffing to this pumpkin. I want it to be nice and plush, and you'll see here that when we add the stuffing, that's what makes it a little bit shorter than the length we had crocheted or chained in the beginning. And yeah, just stuff the pumpkin, nothing too complicated. I hope so far it's been easy to follow along. And then we're just going to do the same thing we did on the bottom along the top. We're just going to bring our needle all the way around, and we're going to cinch it tight so that you don't see the stuffing anymore and it is closed up top. If you were to have a little bit of stuffing showing through on one of the sides, it would be fine because we're going to add a stem. So if it's not perfect, don't worry about it, but it shouldn't be too hard to get it to close up. So now I'm going to make a magic ring, and I am going to work on the stem. I'm going to demo crocheting the stem with two different yarns. For the purpose of a beginner, I feel like this regular worsted weight yarn is a little bit more beginner friendly than the homespun lion brand yarn I use in the next demo. And all I do here is I make a magic ring and I single crochet 4 in that first row. And then without slip stitching into the next row or anything, I just continue to do rows of 4 single crochet until it's about as long as I want it to be. This can vary based on each pumpkin. I've been making a ton of these, so I'm kind of just going with a little bit of variation each time to make it kind of feel like more of a pumpkin patch. You know, each pumpkin is unique. So for the purpose of this tutorial, it's kind of just do what feels right for the pumpkin that you want to crochet. So hopefully you get the vibes there. We're just going into the round and crocheting around until you get a stem that suits your pumpkin. Now I'm going to do the same exact thing here, and I single crochet 4 into a magic ring, and I just single crochet around until it is the length that I feel like fits the pumpkin. Something I did with the other stem example that I will also do here is I leave a pretty long tail when I begin the project. I tend to do that for most things I crochet with because you never know when you'll actually need to use the tail. In this case, I'm not stuffing the stems. So what I do is I go ahead and just push that long tail into the inside of the kind of cup that we crochet. And it's got like that very minimal stuffing, but I don't actually have to like stuff it with the polyester stuffing. And I just stitch it to the top of my pumpkin. And it's really as simple as that. And here you go. Earlier in the video, I showed you some variation with different weights of yarn. The tiny pumpkin was a much finer yarn. The larger pumpkin was a larger weight yarn. You can also vary your gauge with different hook sizes. And yeah, I hope this was easy to follow and you give it a try.